Hi, I'm Keith McGowan, the Outboard Dad. Today, we're going to work on this Optimax, Mercury Optimax. If you own one, we're going to go through the maintenance tips on it. This is one I picked up relatively inexpensively. You can buy these motors for a couple of $100 because someone's just looking to move on for them. They've been sitting around. So if you're diligent and you like and subscribe and comment to me, send me an email, I will help you find those motors like this one that are good candidates. Now we're going to run it through its paces, but at $400 I could sell the lower unit, I could sell the power tilt and trim, I could sell parts off of it. I know I'll definitely make the money back if we do find out that the motor is no good. But I believe it is. I believe the gentleman that I bought it from, but we're going to do some tests and find out. Like you've seen me before, we're going to start with compression check. I already hooked up a battery to this. I haven't touched it yet. So we got it mounted. My friend John came over and helped me mount it up over here with my engine hoist. Hooked up the battery. Let's see what happens when we hit the trim switch. Okay, so the power tilt and trim seems to be working nicely. We're going to take a nice little visual inspection. We do see some chunks missing out of the skeg here. Again, it's not major that needs to be repaired, so it's something we're just going to note. And we're going to check that lower unit fluid to make sure nothing is cracked and we didn't get any moisture in there. As I look inside at my power tilt and trim, it looks very clean. I don't see any damage to the seals. Everything looks to be in good order. So if we get a little closer look here, we can see, yeah, it's a little faded. This motor's been used, but the little balls on top of the trim cylinders are still in good shape. I don't see any oil running anywhere. I don't see any cracks in any of my power tilt and trim seals, wiper seals. I do have a kickstand here. It works freely. So again, this looks pretty clean to start with. Now let's take that cover off. We're going to check the lower unit. We're going to take the cover off and we're going to go ahead and do a compression check on this motor and go through the basics on it and see what we can find. As always, we want to start with a visual inspection. We can pull our top cover off. Has a couple rubber grommets holding it. You can see there's a little air filter in here. Looks pretty clean. Of course, we want to pop it out and check on the inside of that. What we're going to do is take a look at our belt. So this belt looks a little worn. Not crazy worn like it's cracking. It's not cracking. But this is definitely a used motor. It's definitely one that's been out. The motor does spin freely that I can feel here. I do feel a little compression. This is a direct injected motor, so we have a nice injection pump here. We're also going to next pull off our spark plugs and we're going to do a compression check. We're going to put the spark plugs in the wires while we do the compression check, make sure there's a spark. I do not have a wire harness for this with a key switch, so we're going to go ahead and jump this with a jumper wire. And let's get those spark plugs out and let's do that test and see where we're at. So we want to be careful when we're removing these boots. There's a lot of wires here for where the injectors go to, plugs, connections. We want to make sure we're not yanking too hard on a piece of wire that might break a piece of wire. Then the motor won't start, you can't figure out why, and you're chasing down problems for a long period of time. How do I know that? Because I've made that mistake before. So let's take our time. We're going to pull these boots out. Sometimes they make a tool that you can pull the rubber boots off with that sometimes is handy. But we're going to try and pull these off here and get to these spark plugs. So with the help of a pair of good channel locks, I've been able to pull all them off but one. This lower cylinder down here is so low behind the cowling. I think I'm just going to go ahead and pull this cowling off. A lot of times you'll find little bolts and nuts or clips in the bottom of these cowlings that someone dropped when they were working on it and left it there. So it's a good idea to do a full inspection, and let's take these two cowlings off. It should split in half like this and we'll have better access to everything. Let's check it out. So I'm going to do a segment on tools at one point, but today we're just going to use a little Milwaukee ratchet, just a 1/4-inch ratchet. Makes it easier to get into places and loosen things up instead of cranking back and forth. So we always want to keep our eyes and ears open, our eyes mainly, when we're working on something. If we're pulling some spark plug wires or we're disconnecting some plastic switches, we want to listen for any cracks, but we want to look for things too. Because check out what we found here, and this is going to make us look a little further into more things. If you look closely here, you can see that these wires have been chewed up. So some critter's been in here chewing on these wires. So that's the spark plug wires. I'm going to imagine they will still throw a spark, but how well of a spark at high RPM, what's it going to do? So they're going to have to be replaced. We may do a good test run here, but we're also going to have to now check the rest of the wiring in here, especially down in this area. I'm curious if there's any nests in here. I hope there isn't when we get this cowling off the rest of the way. There's only one more bolt I have to take off for the cowling, but we're going to inspect this wiring harness really closely. We're probably going to pull off any jacketing that's on any wiring to make sure that nothing got chewed up and possibly could be broken. So we always want to keep our eyes open when we're working on these motors to catch things that could cause us problems later on. So the last bolt's in a tight spot for this cowling. We're actually going to enter here where the wiring comes out, and I need a shorter extension. So as you can see, we got the cowlings off. Now we can go ahead and remove these plugs one by one. Let's see. Not too bad. This seemed like maybe it was running a little bit rich. It is a little black. But let's check the rest of them out and see what they look like. So in order for me to get the next plug out, I needed to use a little universal. As I told you, the tools are not, I'm not a name brand guy. I have a great relationship with Harbor Freight. I don't need the most expensive tools. This little swivel universal joint is a Craftsman that I got in a kit that my father bought for me when I was in high school. Still have a lot of those tools unless I lost them or broke them. And then when they're broken, Craftsman will replace them. Same thing with Harbor Freight. So sometimes you need to get into special places and you need tools like this. So something I'm just noticing now, very interesting. When I look at the bottom spark plug, yeah, it has some carbon on the top of it. But as I spin this around, I see black paint on here. Look at the other two plugs, they have black paint, a similar spot. So did someone spray paint over this? I don't think so. I don't see anything else. Are these the original plugs that came on this motor? And this motor has sat for many years and really didn't get used that much? I wonder. Let's see what the rest of the plugs look like. And I'm going to use a scope and look inside this engine. I'm going to go get my scope out. We're going to snake it in there. I'm going to see if we still see the hash marks from the machining, from the original machining when the engine was built. This could be a very, very good find. Let's check it out further. Okay, so now we're ready to begin our compression check. I have my compression gauge hooked up to the lower cylinder here. I have all my spark plugs plugged into their respective wires so that while I'm doing my compression check, I can see if we have spark. Let's see what we got. As I said, I have a jumper wire here because we don't have the wiring harness set. So I'm a good 125 on that one. Let's check the rest of them out. I don't see any spark here, but I'm going to assume it's something because I don't have the ignition wiring harness, so I'm going to look into that wiring next. But let's finish our compression check to make sure the engine is good first. So this one amazes me, 130 pounds, every single one almost dead on. I had one that was maybe 128. So this may be a fresh rebuild. I'm going to get that scope now. Let's look inside these cylinders and see how newish this motor looks. That's a new word, newish. So just bought an inexpensive scope. You can buy these on Amazon, like $20, $25. Plugs right into my iPhone. So we're going to plug it in. We're going to snake this camera inside that cylinder, and let's see what we can find. This is also good for if you lose things down in the hull of your boat, and you can snake the camera down there to find out where they are. If you drop bolts down in the cowling, it's good to find things. This is a very useful tool. So I'm not sure how much of this you'll be able to see, but I'm going to go ahead and snake into this first cylinder and give me a little more slack on my wire first. It's nice it comes with about a 15-foot wire so that you can have some distance. When I snuck inside the first one, I saw hash marks as if it was a fresh rebuild or new motor. So as I snake in this cylinder hole, I can see those hash marks on that cylinder. That's pretty cool. Which leads me to believe this really is a motor that was hardly ever used. Let's try another one. Looks like that one, the piston is up top, so let's pick another one. There we go, we can even see the ports on that. Now look at that, I do see some hash marks, but I also see a little rust on that cylinder. So yeah, this motor sat for a long time. Now, is that enough rust to cause a problem? We really don't know unless we're going to pull the heads and go that far. So this may be a motor we want to run for a bit and then test again to see. But it doesn't look to me like there's a lot of pitting in that rust. We can get a little closer look there. Looks like just a very little bit of surface rust, more of a stain than anything else. So really, the paint on the spark plugs, those types of things, leads me to believe this motor was hardly ever used. So this could be a really good find. I can hear the air pump working. On the Optimax motors, they have an air pump and a fuel pump so that they get optimum fuel mixture. That's why they call it Optimax. So next thing we're going to do is I'm going to look around to see if I can find a used control box with a key switch so that I can make sure I'm not shutting something off. It could be that the motor is in gear. I can spin the prop. It does spin freely, so it's not in gear, but maybe the linkage is showing that it's in gear and it's shutting a kill switch there. So that's the next thing we're going to check out. And then we're going to check our lower unit. If our lower unit is good, I'm going to hook up some earmuffs to this. I'm going to get a control box. I'm going to fire this sucker up, get some fuel in there, and we'll see what this does. But this will be a pretty cool motor to put on a boat and run for many years to come and save a ton of money for somebody. So let's continue to check this out, and we'll see where this goes in our next video. Thanks for joining me. I am Keith McGowan, the Outboard Dad, here to help you have a better boating experience.